we're going today. Talking about the Temple Mount. Very soon we're going to get going. Good morning, Hillel Folds. Actually, good afternoon, Hillel Folds. We're going to get going very shortly. Temple Mount in Israel, the big lie of Islam. All right, here we go. And hello to Gracie. Great having you here. Thanks so much. All right, Temple Mount and Islam. Islam's biggest lie. You got it, Hillel. Here we go. Islam's biggest lie. The Temple Mount. First of all, why is it called the Temple Mount? Ta-da! Temple Mount is because, hey Gracie, Shavua Tov, have a great week. The Temple Mount is called as such because it was the place where the temple stood. Not just one temple, but two temples. Now, let's go dates. The first temple was built by King Solomon around the year 1000 BCE. What year are we in now? 2015. You're talking over 3,000 years ago. Now, any Bible-believing person knows about the existence of the temple, about both temples. King Solomon was the son of King David. And then it was destroyed. And then it was rebuilt, the second temple. It's a fact. It's a historical fact. It's an archaeological fact. It exists. It existed. It's the holiest place to the Jewish people. Very simple. Okay? That is facts about the Temple Mount and why it is called the Temple Mount. Now let's go to Islam. Islam believes and says that the temple never existed. Never existed. Don't quote me. Go after the Muslims. The temple never existed according to Muslims. The big lie. Okay? Part of this big lie is that anytime Islam conquers, and yes, I use the word conquers, a geographical area, they then destroy other places, other religions' places of worship and make them their own. It is part of the Islamic culture, part of its conquering culture from when it began. Now here's the kicker, folks. We just said that the first temple was built around the year 1000 BCE. Judaism at the time was already a religion for thousands of years. Abraham, okay? Thousands of years ago. When did Islam begin? Islam only begun in the 7th century. Okay, around the year 610, I believe. 1,600 years after the first temple was built and stood. Okay, 16 years after the temple on Mount Zion, all right, of Zion, of Jerusalem, 1,600 years after that place, after Jerusalem, Zion, the temple was already a holy place to the Jewish people. Only 1,600 years later did Islam even begin. Did the Prophet Muhammad begin the religion of Islam? Very important. History matters. Dates matter. Time matters. Today's day and age, 10 years past seems like nothing. Hundreds of years past seems whoa. Here you're talking about 1,600-year difference between the date the first temple was built for the Jewish people and the beginning of the religion of Islam. 1,600-year difference. We're putting history in perspective. And even with those 1,600-year difference, Muslims still say that the temple never existed. All right, so where does the Temple Mount come into connection with Islam? Very simple. After Muhammad died, we're still talking 7th century, within the 600s, right? Islam began in 610, the year 610 CE. After Muhammad died, there was a fight within his followers about who the true leader was. And because of that, there were Muslims in the area today, geographic area of Syria, who were on the outs, were not accepted by the accepted leader in the area of today called Saudi Arabia, with Mecca and Medina. And the Muslims of Syria were not allowed to visit the Muslim holy sites in Mecca and Medina. So, like any good religious person, the new leader in the area, the new Muslim leader in the geographical area of Syria came up and decided, I'm going to make my own holy site for Muslims to visit. And where did he make that holy site? He chose the Temple Mount. Now, Jerusalem is mentioned hundreds of times in the Bible, in the Torah. The connection to the Jewish people is clear, irrefutable. It is a central part of our religion, written across all of our scriptures. Let's go to the Quran. Let's go to Islam. Guess how many times Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran? That's right, folks. 0. A big 0. Jerusalem is never mentioned in the Quran. So while Jerusalem is mentioned hundreds of times in the Torah, in the Bible, showing the direct connection between Jerusalem and the Jewish people, it is never mentioned in the holy book of the Muslims, in the Quran. When this Muslim leader in the geographical area of Syria built a mosque on the Temple Mount in the year 690, again, over 1,600 years, 1,690, or 680 years more to be exact, since the first temple was established, then the first Muslim built a mosque on the Temple Mount because he wanted a holy place for his Muslims to go to from the greater Syria geographical area, because they were forbidden to go to visit Mecca and Medina because of an internal leadership fight from the first generation of followers in the Islamic world. Now, when there was the Muslim world came back together and there was none of this internal fighting anymore, the Muslims of this greater Syrian area returned once again to visiting Mecca and Medina. They no longer visited the mosque on the Temple Mount. It was no longer a useful holy place for them, because their true holy places were in Mecca and Medina, in what is today known as Saudi Arabia. And don't look at me, don't trust me. Look at the pictures, read the history. Anyone who visited Jerusalem, who visited the Temple Mount, saw that it was a desecrated place for hundreds of years. It wasn't visited. We look at the Dome of the Rock today and it's gold. That wasn't added until hundreds of years later. It did not exist. But that's just a side point. Muslims hardly visited the Temple Mount, hardly visited the mosque on top of the Temple Mount. And again, don't trust me. Go and follow Mark Twain. Read up on researchers and on historians who knew and followed and visited Jerusalem, Israel, hundreds of years ago, the past hundreds of years. There was no connection, because their true connection, their true holy places are Mecca and Medina. The Temple Mount is the one holy place to whom? To the Jewish people. So when did the Muslims start giving importance to the Temple Mount? Only after the Jews returned. After the Jewish people once more returned to rebuilding our land and returned to making it a focus of our people once again, with our yearning to rebuild our holy temple once again, then the Muslims started putting importance. Now, I just saw the most amazing picture posted on Facebook this morning, today, by the Temple Institute. A picture of less than 100 years ago of the Temple Mount. What are Arabs doing on the Temple Mount? They're farming cabbage on the Temple Mount. Who farms cabbage on your holy place? This is a picture, a black and white picture. It shows a cabbage field with Arabs farming it on the Temple Mount. Jews would never plant a farm on the Temple Mount. It's our holiest place in the world. Anyone who considers their place a holy place would not make a farm on their holy place. Yet Arabs were farming on the Temple Mount just 100 years ago. The picture proves it. Right? And I'll post the picture. It was posted by the Temple Institute. Today, even though Muslims do use the place, guess what they do on the Temple Mount? They play soccer. They have events of sports, of jumping around, of kids playing. Is that something you do on your holy place? Is that something you let your children do in your holy place? Or is that something you do in a place where you really want to desecrate it while you're lying to the world, telling them that this is your holy place? So guys, the facts are there. The Temple Mount is the holiest place to the Jewish people. That's it. And what's the big lie? Two aspects to the big lie from the Muslims. One, they lie that there never was a Temple Mount. And don't you already see the evil in their ways by taking away and lying about another people? That already shows evil in their ways and in their intent. I at least say, yeah, there is a connection between the Temple Mount and Muslims. It's not as strong a connection as the Jewish people. And I'm clear about that, but I'm putting historical context, and I'm giving the facts, and I'm showing that, yeah, there was a connection, even though doesn't touch the heels of the connection between the Jewish people and the Temple Mount. But yet in Islam, the Muslims say that there was no connection between the Temple Mount and the Jewish people, that the temple never existed, that the temple was never built. That's a blatant lie that history proves is wrong. And yet they go around saying it, and the world is mum. So big lie number one is that they lie about the connection between the Jewish people and the Temple Mount. And lie number two is about their holy connection to the Temple Mount. They say it's the whole Muslim world. Guess what? Most of the Muslim world doesn't care about Jerusalem. Most of the Muslim world doesn't care about the Temple Mount on a religious reason. They care about it on a political level. They care about it because they want to take it away from the Jewish people, because they don't want us living here. They don't want us back in our homelands. They don't want us back praying in our holy places. So the whole Muslim world says there's no Temple Mount, but they don't care. Again, on a historic level. And read up on your history of Islam. There was only one sect that built the mosque on the Temple Mount because they were forbidden from going to Mecca and Medina to worship. But after they were, again, allowed to go back to Mecca and Medina, they didn't come back to Jerusalem anymore. So folks, first of all, come visit Israel. Come visit Jerusalem. Come visit the Temple Mount. See this all with your own eyes. Experience it. Experience Judaism. Experience the holiest of the land. Experience the holiest place in the world to the Jewish people first and foremost, but it is our holy place in order to spread holiness, peace, and unity to all of mankind. And then join us in talking the facts and spreading the truth about the true connection of the Temple Mount to the Jewish people, which goes back over 3,000 years. And help dispel the myths and non-truths about the Muslim connection to the Temple Mount, basically trying to usurp and take away any Jewish connection to the Temple Mount. That's it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Every day we're trying to give you some great important videos about Israel, the Jewish people, here on Meerkat, at AviAbelow on Twitter. And check out the videos on Israel Video Network. We are here to entertain, to engage, to educate you. Have a fabulous, fabulous week. All the best.